Wheel of Genre, the show for people who are notoriously mulish. Right now, we are reading every story in Harlan Ellison's Dangerous Visions anthology, including this one, Philip K. Dick's Faith of Our Fathers. I'm Zach, and this week I am super interested in the mishmash of influences here. It feels like it's pulling from a lot of different traditions and authors, and it was kind of fun to pick some out, but I have a feeling I missed a few, so I want to ask you about them, Bob.
Let's see if we can nail them down. I'm Bob. I'm interested in Philip K. Dick's attempt to think about religion here and the relationship between hallucinogenic drugs and religion. Zach, something's going on here in this story. So let's see if we can get some of these things that we're seeing inside of the story, some of the references. Let's talk about what is happening in the story. It's quite a strange one. I'm really enjoying this actually because we haven't been liking a lot of the Dangerous Visions stories. I really love Philip K. Dick, and every time we read him, I think, wow, I was trying to convince myself he's overrated every time. It's great. This maybe could have used a little bit of an edit, but do you like this story?
I might agree with you on the edit. I was reading it, and I do feel like his style is a bit hard to take in everything. It's very very noun heavy and very constricted. It feels like there's a lot packed into very very brief, terse sentences. But I agree with you what you said about not being totally happy with the run of this Dangerous Visions anthology. And I think for myself, I was looking at that table of contents and I was like, oh man, we just got to get to the Philip K. Dick. We just got to get there. And I got to say for myself, this did not disappoint. Actually, about 3/4 of the way through, there came a moment where I was like, is this the story of the anthology? Like, is this the good one?
The only good one, yeah.
Well, there's good ones. There's good ones. Don't get me wrong. There's good short stories here, but there's a different class of short story that I call a good short story. You know what I mean? And I wish I could be more specific than that, but just short stories that make you be like, wow, this was it. Yeah. How do you feel like? Well, first off, let's talk about what happened in this story.
Yeah. Okay. Let me talk about what happens a little bit because I'm going to ask you what packs the punch for you, because it does start off very loose. It's a strange story. We have a guy named Chien. This is a counterfactual, or as old pals used to shelve it, a alternative history. But it's a counterfactual where Vietnam and the Communist Party totally reign supreme, even takes over America. So this is actually set in, I think, just outside of San Francisco, but the Communist Party is in control. Now, Chien is going to meet some higher up party members, and he's suddenly accosted by a vet who says, you have to buy these drugs from me. It's illegal if you don't buy these drugs from me. It's a strange premise. He eventually kind of cajoles him into taking these drugs, buying them, and he says, okay, whatever, I'll just try it later. He goes to his meeting. He's assigned this really strange assignment. The people in the party say, look, we suspect these students of being not loyal to the party, and we need you to read, how many, Zach? Was it like 200, 300 college essays?
Yeah.
They say, read these all this weekend and see if you can find out who is the traitor among these students. That's going to be his whole project.
And they're all poetry essays.
They're all poetry essays.
Yeah. About topics which, from what brief skimming he gives, I mean, there was like there was an English transcendentalist. There was a poet writing in Arabic from 1,000 years ago. They have nothing to do with contemporary politics, but he has to go through and find the thought crime, so to speak.
So he's going through all of these thought crimes. He takes the drugs. Suddenly. It seems like snuff. He takes it, and then he starts to have kind of a weird sensation. In this future society, there's an ultimate benefactor, kind of like Big Brother from 1984, when all of a sudden you have to watch an advertisement, you sit in front of your TV, you can't move, and there are people that watch you. They can see you through the TV. If you are ignoring it, or you go somewhere else, someone knocks on your door, this happens to Chien, But something very strange is happening to him because the ultimate benefactor, this person on TV, starts talking to him directly out of millions of people and saying Chien is doing the work of the party. He is one of the most important people right now, and of course Chien just doubts this is happening at all. Then, even stranger, the benefactor appears to be a terrible robot. It kind of reminds me of the Shrike. It's almost like the Shrike appearing on television and really disturbing him. So he calls, reports, I've been drugged. People come to his house, but someone very strange comes to interrupt this. What happens at this point, Zach?
Well, what the person tells him is that he hasn't taken a hallucinogen, he's taken an anti hallucinogen. So, on taking this drug, it seems that he's able to peer past the collective hallucination. And what this person tells him is that there's 12 groups, 12 different kinds of things that people see behind the image of the leader. So actually, I wrote them down. Let me. But distinct categories have emerged. There is not an infinite variety. Some see what you saw. We call it the clanker. Some the aquatic horror. That's the gulper. And then there's the bird and the climbing tube and, she broke off. But other reactions tell you very little. Tell us very little. So people who take this drug see, I guess you could say, the reality behind the image. But no one sees the exact same reality, which is quite contrary, I think, to most ideas. Like most mystical ideas are like, oh, we live in a world of infinite variety and changing forms, but underneath all of that, there's one true reality. But what this seems to be flipping it on its head, in that everyone in the world sees one thing, the leader, but underneath that is a variety. But that hidden truth has a multiplicity to it. It was a very interesting idea.
Yeah, okay, let's, before we continue the rest of we've pretty much summarized the whole thing at this point, but the multiplicity and what that thing actually is very interesting. I think it's also quite a nice idea that Philip K. Dick is looking at, even though it is a very dense and condensed story. The thing eventually, once Chien gets there, he goes to the party and he's going to get behind enemy lines, or at least, I guess, he's part of the party. So not behind enemy lines, but he's going to see the truth. He takes the drug again, which deactivates all of these hallucinogens in the water, and when he sees the creature or the benefactor, it comes up and confronts him, and it's not the clanker. It is some weird see-through monster that comes and puts tentacles on him, and it more or less confesses to him that it is God.
Yeah.
There's quite a surprise. We've had some semi-religious or stories that are referencing God or trying to say what God is. And now we have one where God comes and confronts the main character. What did you think of this? Were you surprised? What did this do for you? Is this a impactful moment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how anyone could be anything but surprised.
Yeah, good point.
There's almost nothing leading up to this moment that would allow you to predict that this is where it's going. But also, the representation of God that it's giving here is so unlike anything else. Whether that would be a Christian God or whatever other kind of God. This is something that's sinister. It's not like the life-giving God. It's God, the death bringer. And it seems to be the animating principle behind not only this political party, but every political party. It sets up the opposition. It sets up the opposition, and it persecutes the opposition to the party. And Mr. Tsien's response to this is basically to try to jump off a 6-story balcony. And as he's about to go over, he feels the grasp of this God, this leader, this creature on his shoulder, and it says, "Not yet. Why would you hasten what I will inevitably come to you from me anyways?" And it doesn't so much as talk him down from the ledge as, I guess, pull him back. It very, very interesting. Yeah. where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? Zach, what do you think about this element of a scary god, a malicious god? It reminded me a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, where we see the gods who are on the outside. You get too close to the truth, and then you find out everything underneath reality is terrifying. These eldritch gods that make you go insane because they're too mind-bogglingly large and evil. But Tanya, this girl who has been helping him, that Chien and Tanya are working together, and Tanya sends Chien in. And so after he reconnects with her, she says, "What is there anything that we can do to fight this thing?" Because he says it's like a god, it's everywhere. And she says, "Well, how do we fight it?" And what he says is, "We believe in it." What on earth is going on here? Why is that going to, if it is like an H.P. Lovecraft god, if it is like Cthulhu, why is believing in it going to fight it?
That's a really good question. And he doesn't even seem to be able to think that fighting it is possible, right? Like, it's not clear. It's almost like accepting death, which the god seems to be identifying itself very clearly, or at least as being the force that brings death on an individual. It's not like a warlord being like, "I will bring death to your cities." It's like it's like the life, the extinguishment of a life force that snuffs out the life of all living things at a certain age of natural causes, so to speak. But when he says we believe in it or we can't fight it, it's interesting because she's asking that on a political level. How do we fight the leader of the nation, whatever the party? How do we fight the leader of the party? And he answers her on a spiritual level or a religious level or an existential level. He says, "You don't. You believe in it. You can't fight it." So what? I mean, I know I'm just spitting your question back at you, but what could belief possibly mean in this case? Is it acknowledging one's death? Does this turn it into a kind of like existentialist SF dystopian novel?
It's got everything, this story. I was wondering about this too. If it's a believe in it, is this kind of a Job story where God comes down and says, "Look, I made the Leviathan, I giveth, I taketh away. I am wrathful, but also benevolent because I created, but also I've created death." But it feels more pessimistic than that, especially when Philip K. Dick is talking in the afterword later. But this God has created all politics and has pitted everyone against each other, and it seems to be for its own entertainment, and does not really, I don't think this God cares about human development, only cares about strife between humans, is what it feels like. And when we read Deus Irae, which is Philip K. Dick and Zelazny, I think, Roger Zelazny together, how do you feel, does that feel like it's a similar kind of attitude? Because there is the God of wrath, and here there is the kind of a chimerical or a mercurial God that keeps changing and also is maybe evil or at least violent? Or does it feel similar?
It's a good question. I think Philip K. Dick is really concerned not with gods per se, but with kind of like archetypal forces that motivate and define human activity. And I think, the God of Wrath is on one side of that, but on this one, I think it's interesting how like this God creature is the leader of, the party. And it's like all like from a normal, like a normal leader defines the policy. They're the figurehead of it. They are, they control it in a way that is very bureaucratic, I guess you could say. Right. And that's not what this God is necessarily doing. I hesitate to use the word God. I feel like it's more of like an eldritch being. You know what I mean? This force, this entity.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that this being is not the visible figurehead of the party. or of any party, because it's controlling all politics is what it says. So we have to almost read it allegorically in the sense that all anyone can see when they talk about politics in this fiction is this figurehead, which is actually a hallucination. But people still look at this figurehead. They watch this figurehead on TV. But behind the figurehead, the actual force behind the politics is this death creature. And it almost feels to me like he's making some kind of commentary that all human activity, all human organization is all some kind of like escape, not escape from death, but like the hidden inevitability of death is what drives larger human groupings and activity. If I was really trying to read it allegorically, I feel like this is what I would have to say.
So it's actually death's head, and that's what you're hallucinating. You see a party member, but it's death's head behind it. Okay. Well, what do you think? We've been reading these afterwords and these introductions. The introductions are by Harlan, then the afterwords are by the authors themselves. I was really interested in Philip K. Dick's afterword in this, because Harlan Ellison just talks about how much Philip K. Dick loves drugs. Basically, that's the whole introduction. But Philip K. Dick says, look, I want to try drugs to know God. I thought, wow, okay. I've heard people say that before. But he's saying that he has no real beliefs in God, only that he can reach an inner realm. And what he thinks is that taking drugs, he will get to a point where he has these, I guess, personal inner experiences, he calls them. But what I thought was really interesting is he also thinks that science fiction can do this, and he almost seems to claim that science fiction can be like a religion, or at least give one religious experience. He says, in a science fiction story, one projects what has been a personal inner experience into a milieu. It becomes socially shared, hence discussable. And that's all comes after him saying about reaching an inner realm, going by drugs and science fiction into this inner realm and finding God. What do you think about this idea of developing an inner experience so it can then be, I guess, communicable or translated to someone, brought into a story so someone else can share it? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of there's a lot of people who there's a lot of people who rely on drugs and alcohol to make their art, and I think both of us, I don't want to say we view them negatively, but I think we're probably in agreement.
Hasn't worked for us.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it doesn't work for us, and it doesn't. I think neither of us like to really read the great drug literature.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't. I think the jury has come back on whether it makes good art, and the jury has voted negatively. And Harlan Ellison says that Philip K. Dick is the only exception to this. The thing is that it doesn't. I don't know. I don't have confirmation that Philip K. Dick is writing on drugs. He may be dreaming up ideas on drugs. He may be, furthering his mental illness, which really took over his life through the use of drugs. But yeah, Ellison's presentation that this was written on LSD, I'm skeptical, because it seems like...
Very skeptical, yeah.
Yeah, Ellison did ask him to write either on LSD or about LSD. And this is a short story about hallucinogenics, but it flips it by saying, what if the hallucinogenics is the normal, and then taking anti-hallucinogenics gets you, gives you a glimpse into higher spiritual truths. And I think that's like such a smart flip that he's done.
He's really flipped it, old Ellison. Dick flipped Ellison. What do you think, though, about the writing idea of I'm writing to share an experience with God? Somehow I have either through drugs or through writing or some sort of personal experience, now I've seen some great truth, which I now have to communicate. What do you think? Because this is inside of Dangerous Visions, and yes, Harlan says, please write under the influence of drugs. That will really rile people up. But I think Philip K. Dick has also taken it too to say, look, what I'm doing is a religious experience, and that might be sacrilegious, so that's why it's dangerous. But what do you think of these new wave science fiction writers trying to claim, hey, what we do is actually a religion?
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that Philip K. Dick would claim it to be a religion or just like an example of religious thought? Because I see throughout this anthology a lot of religious ideas or like ideas about religion. What if humanity was chasing God throughout the universe? What if we had a few other ones? I'm blanking right now, but this is another example of them. But I don't get the sense that anyone's necessarily trying to codify a religion, not in the way that like L. Ron Hubbard would, with his science fiction, religious ideas.
But he does say, I mean, I don't think he's trying to create a religion or make any sort of set of rules for a religion. But I think it's more than just writing about religion, because he says, quote, I myself have no real beliefs in God, but only my experience that he, capital H he uses, is present. Subjectively, of course, but the inner realm is real too. And then he goes on to say science fiction. You project your inner experience and you share it with others. So I think he's putting the two on the same level. Religious experience and science fiction story.
Yeah, I think that I think for him, he's a person who experienced kind of mystical revelations. I guess is the only real way to talk about what he saw or felt, or just the ideas that came to him. And it seems to me like if that's the cheese, then he views the science fiction story as the cracker, the vehicle through which he can put his visions onto, in a form that is digestible or that is transportable to other people to digest. That's my hunch on Philip K. Dick. If there's any one author who I would love to sit down and read through everything they ever wrote, it is Philip K. Dick. I've said this since the beginning, and I will say it again now.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I think we should. Are you using a communion cracker there for the cheese? I was curious. Okay.
That's the church we need.
That's the church.
We need cheese with these communion crackers.
We need cheese. What do you think? So maybe, okay, that seems to be, if I've had a glimmer of truth, I'm going to translate it into a science fiction story. That's the vehicle for other people to have the same glimmer of truth. That's an interesting idea, especially to put it in this anthology. Look, new wave science fiction is something true. But what do you think, in general, science fiction may be just new wave, and we'll continue finding this out, but what do you think about the paranoia in this story, and does paranoia go hand in hand with science fiction? Because, I mean, we're always worried about new technology. We always make big predictions about what's going to happen. Y2K many years ago. Now with artificial intelligence, we're all, assuming that it's going to take everything over. But do you think that's science fiction doing that, creating the paranoia for the sake of drama and to sell, and then we latch onto it, like War of the Worlds? Or is science fiction kind of shedding light on dangers of things in your experience for what you've read?
I think more of the latter. I mean, I don't know how much in this story I feel like there's true paranoia. In a lot of Philip K. Dick, there's maybe what I would call paranoia, but this one, the only time I felt a sense of like true paranoia was when they're talking about how the water is all drugged, because there's something inescapable about all that. Everyone's drinking water. You can't not drink water, and it's all drugged to keep you complacent. It's very modern conspiracy theory, to be honest. But a lot of the fear that I associate with science fiction, the warnings. And this, let's come back to this conversation on our next episode. But a lot of the fear and the warnings that science fiction authors give to readers. Oh, be scared because this is what the world will look like if we do this or that. They don't feel like Philip K. Dick's ideas. Like, I think the easiest example is the television set here, the television set that watches you and someone comes and shouts at you if you're not watching it. That's a George Orwell idea. And that was, that was come up with 2 decades before the story was written. So it's like, I don't know, it feels, I don't want to say tacked on, but it doesn't feel, it feels quite secondary to the aesthetics of Philip K. Dick, to the what I would consider the primary aesthetic core of Philip K. Dick. What do you think?
I don't know. I felt very paranoid in this story, to be honest, because our leader who tells us all of our truths is false, and we don't know that for sure. The whole part of the story, the whole plot of the story is doubting whether he really is some sort of space alien, some sort of monster, or doubting if he really is the ultimate benefactor, because we see him right in front of our eyes. He's right there on the television. Only when we stop taking this hallucinogen do we see the truth. So I think that there's the water, there's the politics, there's the leader, there's all of our sense of truth and television. But I don't know, I feel like War of the Worlds, people really got into that. The radio broadcast, people really believed it was happening, and that kind of started a fear of aliens. I don't know how prevalent the fear of aliens was before that. I think that might be another element of danger in this story, is that science fiction can be dangerous because it can create these new ideas, not just warn us of the future to come, but also create the future to come. Science fiction might have more of a hand in what the future actually looks like. Elon Musk, again, we've talked about him before, and everyone talks about him all the time, but to belabor this,
they won't stop.
We had tons of time. They won't stop. That horse is dead. He read and read and read and read and read science fiction. That's all he did as a kid, pretty much, and started his own company. But he read like 6 books a day, and now he's trying to make some of those ideas come true. So I think that science fiction is more powerful than we would give it credit for. It is a warning, perhaps, but it also is an arbiter of new ideas and an arbiter of new technology, because we follow we follow with technology. The technology follows the fiction.
Sure, I agree with that. Yeah. I feel like there's almost a, you know what I mean? Like, let's imagine you're driving a dark road and there's headlights shooting out, going off in like a triangle shape.
So it's a David Lynch movie. Yeah.
Yes. The realm of what is possible for human ingenuity and human invention seems to be all that, what is contained inside of these headlights. And to try to complete this metaphor, science fiction throws out the lights into the undiscovered realm of possible scientific inventions. But I think that we're not going to invent things that we can't imagine that they possibly exist yet. And what science fiction does is shine a light out at what's possible and what should be researched and what should be strive for. I don't know. How do you put this verb form together? But
I thought it was striven for, yeah.
Is it striven for?
Maybe it's, who cares? It's probably strived for.
Striven me timbers. So you get where I'm going with this. I do think that the more science fiction one reads, the more you kind of see this cross-pollination of ideas and this like broader mental universe of what could come in the future, what to expect, what to reach for.
What do you think Philip K. Dick or H.P. Lovecraft would think about artificial intelligence? If it's a light that only shines as far as we can reach, and now suddenly all the lights turn on at once, and H.P. Lovecraft keeps warning us that there are terrible things that we shouldn't see. Are we going to find them too quickly? Are they going to swallow us up? How does the paranoia work for our current age?
Big question. I feel like
should we find out in our next episode?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, find out in our next episode. I feel like the 3 Body Problem series, which we do need to read together,
Mm.
really takes on this idea of like, what if the lights turn on too quickly and it gets a little too scary? But yeah, I do feel like the entire Lovecraftian idea is that there are things that the limited view of science, the limited scope of what's possible within the scientific discourse of the moment, anything that exists outside of that is going to be terrible, monstrous, or seemingly so, godlike, demonic. Um, and in that sense, I do feel like, we can see the kind of Lovecraftian influence on here. But, if there's one thing we haven't talked about in this story, it's all the different other authors that are being pulled from. I hate to slip out of, what we're talking about now, but, we got Lovecraft, we got dystopian fiction, we have spy fiction. I mean, he's going in
Yeah,
undercover
that's very
at the
true.
party,
Very true.
and it's wrapped in a sci-fi wrapper. Anything else you noticed?
Love story. There's a love story. It's kind of a sudden love story. But after they have experienced so much fear, Tanya and Chien, they decide, wow, this has been too scary. And then their love commences.
I think that part of what makes Philip K. Dick so masterful, and I think he doesn't get enough credit for this, is that it feels so erudite in terms of literary style and genre trope, all being folded in together to tell a well-rounded and multi-layered story, a story that is able to use different tropes to clearly communicate the story that it's trying to tell or the mood of the scene that we're in. So many stories in this anthology are just one note. You know what I mean? They're just one tonality, and this is rich. This is good.
I love it. It is very rich, and it starts out very similarly. I like how you've described it as you're brought into the world, you see how rich the world is, but you're kind of let in slowly, and you figure it out. You're taught how rich the world is through experiencing it. It reminds me a lot of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and I wonder if that is, as far as the beginning, I wonder if that is how Philip K. Dick thinks of his fiction, where I'm going to introduce you to a character who's about to have some sort of hallucinatory experience, and they're going to bring you into this world slowly, because at that point Deckard is dialing things on his phone, which will create different emotions for him, different experiences. We're suddenly thrust into Chien's world, and someone's throwing drugs at him, which are going to change everything. It's interesting that he often likes to expose a truth underneath a veneer. I feel like that's a very Philip K. Dick thing, and you slowly uncover that veneer, doubting it all of the time. You often know what the inevitable outcome will be, but you still don't want it to be the truth until you get to the end.
I think we got to read more Philip K. Dick. All right. Well, this has been a good one, possibly my favorite one we read so far, but we have over half the book left. So I don't want to put my stamp of approval, the blue ribbon can't be awarded just yet. So let's keep reading and see what we find. Talk to you later, Bob.
Talk to you later, Zach.